Hey, I'm Joe Khalil here with Reality Check for Ross Coulthart. We just sat down with Congressman Tim Burchett for an extended interview on his recent briefing that he got, which he came out of with a sort of different perspective and said, look, if the country were able to see and hear what he saw and what he heard, it would be a paradigm shift. You'll see in the interview here that we let him talk. I asked a question and he really just took it and would run with it. But it was a lot of good insight, a little bit of frustration about why there's not progress more so than there already has been, but a lot of interesting insight from a guy who has now been in the rooms and on the front lines of disclosure. Here is that interview. Congressman, we had heard a lot about this briefing that you got. You've been talking a lot about it, not in detail of what you heard. Sure. But can you lay out, leaving that briefing, it seems like you were a bit of a changed man after that. Talk to me about what the feeling was after.
Well, I've had multiple briefings, and I guess, you know, I get a lot of doubters, and people make fun of me, members of Congress, which is kind of ironic because there's always the guy in the crowd that makes a joke about it after somebody else does, and they come up to me and they say, man, I need to tell you something, you know, I'm in the military, or I saw something, or got a lot of people interested in this issue. But and I've had so many of these briefings now. I even had one since the one that you're describing. I had that was a member of our leadership arranged, which tells you the serious nature of this thing. Yeah. And, you know, I just think people need to know what we've seen and what these pilots are seeing. And Luna, for instance, we requested all those videos, and she is, you know, gave kind of a deadline when she'd like to have them by, and she calls over there, and they say, well, we don't know anything about the letter kind of stuff, the same old stuff you and I've run into for years on this issue. And America's just ready. I think they would they'd be alarmed about what it is, and I think mostly they'd be alarmed at why the government won't allow it out. Yeah. And what's at the base of it, and you know, all the theories aside, whether you think it's extraterrestrial, if it's something from this earth, you know, if it's the Russians or the Chinese or the Americans, which I don't think it is, and then maybe allow some of the pilots to talk and tell exactly what they've seen. And the last briefing I had, some pretty incredible photos, and I think that you should have the right to see those. Yeah. And the critics are going to blast it. You know, they're going to say it's AI, it's whatever. But you got to go back and ask yourself, why would some of the best pilots in the world, why would they risk their credibility to come out with this? Because anytime they make a sighting, a lot of times they'd have to get a psych evaluation, get all this stuff, and even if it's something they saw on radar. But now we've got officers in the Navy seeing these very, very large objects on the sonar traveling at a very high rate of speed, something that's exponentially faster than anything we can accomplish. You got to realize that you have an object out there in the ocean that hovers, above the ocean in the air, that hovers for, could be hours on end. We have nothing with that capability. You have to you'd run out of fuel. And then when they take off, they just, you know, maybe straight up, and the power to do that is the energy it'd take to fuel Los Angeles. I mean, it is that incredible. And I just don't see any reason why our government should be hiding it. And I don't like going into a meeting and an unelected bureaucrat tells us that the president is on a need-to-know basis. To me, that should be very telling to America that there's a lot more going on with this behind the scenes than we're aware.
And you've heard that directly?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, and I know Matt Gaetz spoke a couple weeks ago about a briefing he had on a breeding thing between alien life, but he didn't say he'd seen it. He didn't say it was fact. He just said that it was discussed with him by a member of the military. And have I heard those things? Oh, sure, I've heard those before, but I haven't seen anything. And I have my own beliefs about it, but about all the what's going on. But that doesn't necessarily mean I'm right or wrong. I just think it's time for America to get this stuff, get this information.
What can you share about that briefing that, really made you come out and say people would be shocked to see this? Can you tell us about,
well, it was, I can tell you that just because everything I asked about, because there was someone in there in the meeting I felt like that was there to disrupt, to maybe say that this person was not telling the truth. And again, this person had no reason to lie to us. It was in the skiff, of course. So I'm very limited on anything I can really say about it. But they said, I gave certain incidences that had occurred and or that I'd heard occur. And they could name dates, people, places, and to me it was very convincing. And I knew some of it, and they filled in the gaps. And these were things that there was no hesitation whatsoever. There was no, it wasn't anything like that. It was just straightforward. And then when this person asked these questions, I felt like they were to disrupt and contradict what they were saying. And it went just a complete 180. And that's what you're going to have, because you're going to have members of Congress who want to, for whatever reason, they don't want the truth, or they know it, and there's a certain arrogance up here too. You got to admit that. I mean, there's a complete arrogance. And again, I don't know if it's about little green men or flying saucers. I just know we're spending tens of millions of dollars on something. I think we should know what the heck we're spending that money on. And you can, when they bring it all out, just let people make up their own minds. Because there's going to be a group that's going to say, and look, I'm a born-again Christian. I'm from the forgiven end of that spectrum. But I'm not worried about the demonic element. I hear people say that. But there's no reason for demons to be doing this. It's such a small little area. I mean, they could come up here to Congress as easy as maybe they already have. I don't know. But and do I think it's the Chinese or the Russians? And I go back over this. If it was the Russians, they wouldn't be bogged down in Ukraine. If it's the Chinese, they'd own us. Some would argue, as I've stated, they own us already, but more so. And would it be the Americans? Why in the world would we risk a $500 million high-tech aircraft or a fleet of aircraft or a battleship or something to be around these things and a pilot losing their life when we just saw, rightfully so, the president spent millions of dollars to rescue a pilot. We did not, and there's no telling what that costs, but that's a signal to the rest of the world and to our people that we value life. So there's no reason for us to be doing that. And I won't go too far into it, but I've talked to folks that are at the highest levels, and they will tell you that they've asked the one higher up level in the whole security paradigm, I guess, and they've indicated that it is definitely not them.
So that sort of transitions me well to my next question, which is that we've heard rumors about President Trump potentially preparing for some level of disclosure about.
And I believe that. I had that very conversation with him.
So where is he on that? Is he ready to do that? And a follow-up on that before you get to it is, let's say he makes some kind of statement during the war with Iran. Do you think that sort of undermines, people might say, well, he's trying to distract?
They're always going to say he's distracting. This is just a distraction. And the best day to release this stuff was yesterday. And the second best day to release it is right now.
So is he going to do that?
I hope so. I think he's not beholden to that community.
Yeah. And but you've talked to him about it. What's your feeling on whether he's ready?
Well, I don't generally publicly discuss too much what I discussed with the president about, because that could end up, I would not talk, he wouldn't talk to me as freely as he does when we talk. But we talked 14 minutes. I was looking at my watch and I was like, holy cow, it's 14 minutes. It's about a lot of things, but yeah, I told him, I said, it's like layers of the onion, Mr. President. I said, you just keep peeling it back. Yeah, you put the 1 and 2 people in there, but these lifetime career people are in there, and for whatever reason, they're not releasing anything. And also, I feel like the material or whatever it's out there that we have, we don't really have it anymore because they farmed it out to these corporations, and these corporations are not FOIA-able. Freedom of Information Act is for the people back home. Yeah. It's when I can say, hey, FBI, release this stuff. I want to see this stuff. And under FOIA, allegedly, they're supposed to release it. But say a Ford Motor Company had it, they wouldn't have to release it. And I feel like that's what's happened to a lot of it. And a lot of the stuff we've seen is that I think that we have is probably the people that are dissecting it or whatever they're doing with it probably don't realize exactly what it is or where it came from. They might have an idea, but people with the direct knowledge are mostly gone. So it's kind of like during at Oak Ridge during the Second World War. I've met people. I met this one guy I met one time. I was out knocking on doors, and he was of my parents' age, and I asked him what branch he was in because he was putting his American flag out. And he said, well, I wasn't in the war. And I said, oh, okay. And he was kind of sheepish about it. And he said, well, I worked at Oak Ridge. And I was like, if my dad were here, he'd hug you because Daddy was on Okinawa when they dropped the bomb. They thought they were going to invade Japan. They were getting ready. He's 1st Marine Division. They were going to be in the fight. And so my daddy was here. He'd hug your neck. My mama would probably give you a kiss on the cheek. But he said he just kind of said this thing. It always stuck in my mind. He said, funny thing. He said, my wife worked there too. I never knew what she did, and she never knew what I did till after the war. Because people honored that back then. It's not everything's a book deal or a clickbait or something, and it's compartmentalized. And
that makes it harder.
It makes it very hard. And then when those people die, direct knowledge goes. Roswell, everybody talks about Roswell, and there's a couple other incidents that occurred. But it doesn't help when you go into a meeting, one of these secure meetings with a bureaucrat who's kind of a smart aleck, political appointee, and you have the career people that are usually their military officers, and you ask about a specific incident, and the direct quote to me was, we do not have data points on that, Congressman. And it was something that was a pretty documented case that had occurred, and there's a couple of them actually we talked about, and they bring in this smart aleck thinking he's uncovered everything, that we're just a bunch of idiots. He showed a bunch of, one was a birthday balloon, the metallic ones that have some kind of metal in them or whatever, and then of course they look like what you can see is a flying saucer. And somebody takes a picture of it outside the window of a 747 as they're flying by, whoosh, and it looks like it's going, but it's really just stationary. And he said, well, and they slow it down and do all this stuff, and then you actually see a cartoon character on this balloon. Obviously, this is, and nobody's even talking about that. That stuff's just. Even the folks, the so-called UFO community, they just dismiss those kind of things because they
actively trying to disprove some of the
yeah. And I felt, and his arrogant, smart aleck nature was not very beneficial. It was a complete waste of time. And I have noticed when I walk into some of these meetings, the attitude changes. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, I want to just sort of process what you think it would be like if the president decided to release images or videos that have been classified, or goes and says, there are these technologies and we believe they very well may be NHI, non-human intelligence.
Every time we ask for something specific, the military or the war pimps at the Pentagon, the intelligentsia as I call them, they hide behind national security. Yeah. If you remember, I had the bill a few years back.
Yeah.
It was 2 pages long to release it, release everything. And then the Democrat Schumer, actually, in the Senate, everybody thought, oh, Schumer's on board with us. And he wanted to release, his bill is 60 pages. Mm-hmm. And it created some structure similar to the Kennedy files. Kennedy was shot over 60 years ago, and they still won't release everything on that. And that's what they wanted to create, and everybody was cheering, oh, Schumer's on our side. No, he's not. If he was on our side, he would have pushed to done this years ago. the push is coming from people that haven't been here very long, and some of our leadership now, after they've seen some things, they want to know.
But I want to get back to, like, you mentioned you think people are ready to hear this and make their own judgments and see what you've seen. I'm just wondering, like, I'm thinking back to the most historic moments in my life, like 9/11 comes to mind. I feel like this would be a moment like that. The president comes out and says, look what
comes on the news, say, this is what it is, we don't know what it is.
Yeah, so
but the military industrial war complex, whatever you want to call it, is going to hide behind national security every dadgum time. They're going to claim that, and that's part of the problem. That's why we've got a president in the White House, I think, that gets it and is sick of it and thinks America maybe is not arrogant enough to believe that he's the end all.
Yeah. Robert heard something from some sources about Arrow reaching out to other agencies. We don't know exactly what this is about.
Yeah, and I have a lot of fear because of that. I don't like Arrow.
What do you know about, what can you say about their reaching out? It seems like there's some kind of coordination about...
they want to be the ones to coordinate it. And in my opinion, they've been the problem in the past because their guy has attacked me, their former, and just said some things that if he actually said it, I didn't hear it. But if he said it, they're just untrue. And that's part of the problem, too, within this so-called UFO community. There's a lot of fighting, and everybody wants to... And I get it. Somebody's selling T-shirts and baseball caps, and they got a book tour, and they want to do a movie and all this stuff. And I think there's plenty for everybody. I'm not worried about all that. I'm not caught up in all that. I just want to get the truth out. I think transparency, that's something I've been a big part of for a long time.
Okay. I just continue to wonder about if it's not the president coming out, do you see any authoritative figure that could come out with a level of credibility that would make Americans say,
unless somebody walks out of one of those labs with something and releases it before they disappear or commit suicide by shooting themselves in the back of the head 12 times, I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. And last one for you. What do we know, if anything, about these 10 scientists?
It's actually more than that, actually, if you go back a little farther. But we know that they were in our aeronautical defense industry or complex, just all around the spectrum on that. And it's
with clearance, many of them high level
clearance. And you figure 10 of them, that we'll just say the 10. If there were 10 chefs across this country disappeared or died mysteriously, people would start questioning what the heck. There were 10 used car salesmen, dealerships, 10 preachers, 10 whatever, 10 masseuses, I don't care. I think America would probably take notice, and I think they finally are taking notice because this all fits in. And I know family members are going to say, well, they got nothing to do with the UFO, but generally they don't talk. They keep it. Most of those guys and gals are so locked down, they keep their mouth shut because they didn't. Their nuclear secrets that they have would have already leaked out as well.
And maybe futile effort, but is Congress looking at that at all? I haven't seen any.
Some of them are, but somebody. It's always just us on the fringe that are doing it, and there's a few of us that are involved. And I'd say there's about, I don't know, maybe 10 of us that are watching this thing pretty close and haven't peeled off yet. Because some of those people were, oddly enough, were people that I'd encouraged to come to meetings because I wanted people that were objective and maybe didn't believe.
Yeah. Some of the scientists, you mean?
No. Oh. Some of the members of Congress.
Oh, gotcha.
And now some of them are some of the. I mean, they're the biggest fans of this thing that I've seen, actually, because they came from nothing and then they see these things and they can be skeptical of some of it and some of it is questionable. But we've had so many obstacles on this thing. When Luna and Matt Gaetz and I went down to Florida to Eglin, they turned us away. We were told we were going to see. There were some pilots that wanted to talk to us, and they showed it. They briefed us on some stuff that was pretty incredible that had nothing to do with this subject. And then, and Matt told them, said, we're going to subpoena you all. And I mentioned to him, I said, here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell us the answer is 1.75 and the real answer is 1.74, and you're going to be held in contempt. I said, you're going to mess something up and you're going to get in some serious trouble here. I said, because Matt's pretty tough orator and he's a very tough attorney, and he got on the phone, and whoever Big Air Force is, because they came back in about an hour, and they took us upstairs and gave us a nice fruit tray at taxpayers' expense, and then they brought the pilots in, and those are the kind of things I wish America could listen to and talk to, because it was very interesting. And I mean, that just sort of, that kind of lit the fuse for a lot of members when that deal went down.
All right, I will leave it here. Is there anything else that you want to share that we didn't talk about now?
Yeah, I just say I'm as frustrated as America is. I see people say, I wish Burchett would shut up about this, but you all ask me about it. I don't set up the interviews. I'm glad to talk about it. I just, I'm very frustrated with it too. I don't know that we'll ever get to the bottom of it unless Trump does it, or unless one of these scientists walks out of one of these private labs and says, what's going on? So I would hope, and people, and let me clarify something too. People say, you need to go to Area 51, you know, to Wright-Patterson, you need to go here or there. You know, as soon as we announce we're going to go there, I don't think we're going to find, I think we'll probably find an empty warehouse. Yeah. It's going to take the President of the United States to step up and say, this has gone on long enough. We got to get to the bottom of this.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the time. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.